It's frightening, but those stats need to be thrown at us all the time, more so than ever, because that's the only way we're going to wake up. The sadness is, and I've experienced it myself, the rhino poaching in South Africa suddenly went through the roof in about 2007, 8, around there. It all kicked off. And it was because suddenly you had the Asian markets, you look at China. China is a consumer. Vietnam's a consumer. But they all went through this incredible wave of wealth. Now, bearing in mind that the rhino horn was consumed by a very wealthy Far Eastern person, and they believe that it's aspirational. It's like owning a Porsche or whatever else. Yeah. There's also medicinal uses that they look at using it for. There's multiple uses for it.
Like shark fin.
Exactly. Same thing. So it's almost something you'd gift somebody if you really wanted to impress them. And that's fine. I respect that we've all got our things in culture, and we have to be respectful of that. But they all suddenly became very wealthy in 2007, 8, 9. We know what happened in China. It just went through the roof. Yeah. And so you had a middle class that was suddenly able to afford rhino horn. So the demand for it suddenly just went through the roof. And so we saw this height. Now we were losing 1,000 rhino a year in South Africa at one point. It got totally out of hand. And you'd see social media posts every day of rhinos' faces just hacked off and blah, blah, blah. And then this hatred would grow for the Far East. And it was just awful. But then people start switching off to it because they become so fatigued with seeing it every single day. And you're just like, when you're scrolling now, you think, I don't want to look at it anymore. And unfortunately, with the climate crisis that we're facing today, you're going to have the same thing. People are going to, because it's depressing. It just brings you down the whole time. So we need clever ways to get this message across. And it is through sharing these stats. But what is the solution? What are the good news stories that are going on out there? Because we only hear the bad news stories.
Sure.
Somebody's got to raise their hand and say, come guys, we've got to do this. We've got to actually start telling the story in a positive light and tell the good news stories and the youngsters are engaged they're more engaged than any of us ever were. So we've got to take a feather out of their caps. They're the future. We've destroyed it for them. So they're the saviors. But we've got to climb on the bandwagon and help them with the knowledge and the experience that we have of running our businesses and see how we can apply that. Every business today needs to start giving back. And I think we're starting to realize that. So we've got to do our bit. We've got to do our bit as corporates to support the changes to what is going to happen to it. It's inevitable. I mean, it's a disaster. We've annihilated so many species, and it just keeps coming. So, yeah, I don't have the solution to this. I mean, we're doing our piece in a very small way in terms of bringing people to wild places and hopefully educating them and edutaining them, as I said earlier. But that's not going to solve it. Those are the people those are the folk that can afford to come to our camps. We've got to catch a wake up seriously, and governments need to start actually telling us how to do things. We all listen to government when they say recycle, and we all step in line. And I think COVID's been one of the most interesting ones, because when the government told us to stay at home, we all listened. Yeah. So if the government, and I know it became very dictatorial to a point where we all said, geez, this is actually, but maybe with COVID taught us that if government can guide us and we are forced to listen, because there'll be penalties if we don't, that's the way that government actually need to deal with this, because we listen to the rules and we stick to the rules. Those rules need to be in place. That's just my opinion.
Sure.